Welcome back, folks. MTG Joe here. Today we're doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. So this particular video will be for standard best of one. We try to cover all the formats, best of one, best of three. What I'll start trying to do going forward is for exploring historic, given that we don't get a huge amount of data for best of three right now. I'll merge those into singular videos. And then with decathlons, we did a bunch of coverage for decks for there, any of the arena events. So if you're looking for deck lists, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I can get you all the stats, all the top deck lists each week and in the evolving meta. So if you want to get to Mythic, you want to reach top 1200, or you just want to find cool decks to play, this is your spot to do so. Thank you, everyone. We did hit 7,000 subs. The next goal for the channel is to try to hit 10,000 by June. So if you haven't done so, like I said, free to subscribe to the channel. Goes a long way and it helps me out. But in any case, we're jumping into it as always. We are looking January 8th through the 15th. Diamond and Mythic Rank 64,000 matches of Magic Best of One were played. And as always, we're getting this data that you see on screen from UntapGG. A companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win rates, loss rates, deck collection, in-game overlays, whole bunch of features for free that you can get started with. The link is in the video description down below. But I'll paste all these deck lists as well in an importable format, so don't worry, you don't have to copy down card for card. Easy, try to make it as pain-free as possible for you to get these decks in. So the top performing deck, it had a 1 week break, but Soldiers is back on top, 63% win rate for the blue-white Soldiers list. So this was a deck that was consistently either the blue-white or the mono-white Soldiers. Week after week for about a month and a half. Mono-black took it over last week. But we saw Mono-black this week drop to third space, which we'll get to. But blue-white Soldiers, really just kind of the considerations. You usually always get these 8 1-drops in the deck. So 4 recruitment officers, 4 Yodi and frontliners. The kind of mix with the deck is what they do with the 2 mana slots. So we're seeing the Resolute reinforcements being played as a 4 of. Sometimes you'll see some interaction spells. Sometimes you'll see the 2 mana in list 1. But Harbin plays really nicely in this list. It's a powerful threat on 2 that can also get just buffed with like Resolute reinforcements. It's pretty easy in this deck to get the 5 soldier count, and then you get a nice Anthem effect. You're pairing that with Valiant Veteran, which is a Lord effect that you can use as a mana sink later game. Thalia for tax effects, and then you have your kind of package of Brutal Cathar as the only removal spell in the deck. Siege Veteran for the Luminarch Aspirant want to be at home, put counters on things, but also give you a bit of insurance. If they do kill stuff, you get creatures back if they're a non-token soldier. Your Sky Strike Officer is your card advantage engine. You can tap and draw some cards, also creates bodies on its own. And then Myrell's your must-answer threat, just lets you go really wide in terms of board states. A little surprised to see only 3 of these. This card's always very good as well. Like, I find these are the 2 must-kill threats for the most part, similarly with Siege Veteran, but this just provides you a lot of kind of go-long ability, and Myrell gives you a very wide body as well. The bonus of going blue-white is you get access to Fortified Beachhead, which is another mana sink in terms of a utility line. We've sometimes seen the deck play Mishra's Foundry, but this version's opting for the Secluded Courtyards, and then 1 Plaza Heroes. You have legendaries in Myrell, Harbin, Thalia, kind of mixed in there as well, that you can get some, in a pinch, give it hexproof and indestructible. So next up, we have Grixes Midrange. So the Grixes boys from Best of 3 have found their way into the Best of 1 format. And this is a deck that's really built around like the Fable, the Mirrorbreaker, Shieldred, just all those fun things in Standard. These 3 cards, it's always these 3 cards. The bonus of going Grixis over straight Rakdos is you get access to Corpse Appraiser, where in these grindy matchups, it provides you card advantage as well as pseudo graveyard hate. You have Urtai in this version that can be a counterspell or removal. Corpse Appraiser, very good target with Fable and Mirrorbreaker, similarly with Bloodtithe Harvester, and then you get access to make this appear. Some Duress, Cut Down, Abrade, Go for the Throat, all kind of scattering of removals. And then you have a Blade Coil Serpent on the top end. So in past weeks, we've seen them on 2 Blade Coil. They've now done a switch to an Urtai, a little bit more early game interaction. The mana base with this particular list will also be on 5 Swamps because it's mainly a dedicated black deck with splashes of red and blue. You want to be able to cast your Invoke, which has a 4 black casting cost. So it's not the easy, you're not splashing an Invoke Despair, basically. Moving to the next deck, Monoblack Aggro. So Monoblack was #1 last week. We see it drop a bit into a 61% win rate deck this week. And this is the aggro version. So there's kind of 2 variants of Monoblack going around. There's the Control or Invoke version. That's usually playing a little bit higher up on the curve. You're playing the full 4 Invoke Despairs, anywhere between 2 to 4 Shieldred in there. This particular version being the aggro version, you can usually tell the difference being the Cult Conscripts in the 1-drop slot. So just the availability of more early threats. This version is also doing a split of Go for the Throat and Infernal Grasp. Could be that they're running into some more artifacts. So whether it be the Is It Ramp deck in Best of 1, Phyrexian Flesh Gorgers, or any of the kind of prototype cards. So this kind of split addresses it. Misery Shadow is a good mana sink that grows bigger. Gix gets you some card advantage. Lily for hand hate and kind of some pseudo removal there. So this version is a little bit more reliant on your Gix to provide you that card advantage. Or like mana sink into the Vault Sleeper. You don't have that Invoke ability to just suddenly be like, yeah, I'm going to draw 2 to 3 cards or like blow up your board. The bonus is because you're not as heavy on like quad block and a casting cost, this deck's playing for Mishra's Foundry as a creature land that can attack. We then go to Esper Legends. So this is a deck that never wants to see a Field of Ruin or Desolation, whatever it's called. No basics in this deck. This deck is just wanting to deplete you of all your wild cards. 61% win rate. So this is a deck built around Rafine and a bunch of legendaries. You have Plaza Heroes, since your deck's mainly legends, that allows you to easily cast your spells. And with the deck, you just got like Thalia's as a 4 of, Rafine as a 4 of, Urtai as a 4 of, just because they can serve as removal and bounce. Rafine helps address kind of drawing duplicate copies. You have Steel Seraph, which can be used for life gain or just evasion of any sorts. Ao, Junji, kind of just a scattering. Ratadrabic. I would probably try to find space for another Shieldred at least. Maybe over something like Ravenman, which is just kind of weak on its own. Ravenman's fine if you're using Rafine, but even then, like, Shieldred just beats decks on its own. Like, at least this puts pressure on every turn, and it works nicely with giving you more bodies for Rafine. Ludwig is an interesting one to get stuff back from your graveyard. Ashnod's just a 1-mana spell that can then exile cards from your graveyard, so take advantage of throwing things in the yard as well. We then go to Mono Red Burn, Aggro, whatever you want to call it. So this is at 60%. This is a mechanized warfare version of Mono Red. So it just makes all your red things deal 1 additional point of damage. So this version here, you're playing in the festivities, good against the like soldiers or kind of low to the ground aggro decks. Gets added bonus with each copy of Mechanized Warfare you have out there. But just a lot of aggression early, a lot of cheap 1-drops. Kumano, one of the best mono red cards we've seen in a while. Swiftspear, very playable across multiple formats. The Chick, just an evasive body that could come back. I still don't like Feldon, but it's like the best we have. The Bloodthirsty Adversary is nice to get us flashback some of your early burn, as well as Reckless Impulse for card advantage. I'd probably, like, honestly, I'd drop this to 2 and play 4 of these. This card just overperforms in terms of just drawing you deeper in your deck. It also could be flashed back. If you draw 2 Feldons, they're garbage. You can't block with it anyways. And it's kind of conditional. Like, you have to cast those cards. This gives you a little bit more flexibility. This only lets you cast 1 of them. This lets you cast the 2 of them. So some utility there. And again, another monocolor deck that's leveraging the 1-channel land and then some number of Mishra's Foundries. 21 lands is probably fine for this curve, especially because you have the Reckless Impulse in there. Then go to Mono White Aggro. So this is kind of the more traditional, so not necessarily the soldiers build. You have some soldiers in there, and like Recruitment Officer, which can find you like the Guardian, the Thalias, just incidentally. Some of these are soldiers, some aren't. But you still have like the Intrepid Adversaries, which have fallen on the wayside now that it's more soldier focused. But this is more akin to the traditional mono white deck. Anointed Peacekeepers doing its Elite Spellbinder impersonation. Sarah Paragon. So I like the Guardian of New Benalias. I never liked it in the mono white soldiers deck because you're throwing things away, but in a deck that's starved for card advantage, getting rid of resources to protect your 2-drops not always the best. In this deck, I actually don't mind it and kind of like the synergy because you can get rid of like redundant copies of Thalia or Adeline, but it also lets you just recast stuff from Sarah Paragon. So it's kind of like virtual card advantage in a way. Also some Steel Seraphs on the top end, which is really, look at it as a 3-drop in this deck for the most part. And then another deck with some Mishra's Foundries, 2 Ajanjos. This and Bazeju are probably the ones I'd be most inclined to play 2 of, just because after you play the 1, you're good to just keep this up as removal in most instances. We then go to Orzhov Control. This is a deck we haven't really seen much of in past weeks. So 58%, this is the kind of big mana, we're going to Farewell, Invoke. So your main win conditions are a resolved wedding announcement, make some tokens, some bank busters. You got Archangel of Wrath in here, Wandering Emperor, Invoke. So there's still a good number of win conditions, but just a lot of answers, cut downs, march, destroy evil, go for the throat, soul transfer. Celestis helps you kind of shape your draw. It also gives you red mana if needed for the Archangel. Shooting, you're splashing some red in the mana base as well to be able to accommodate the Archangel in this case. Then go to Rakdos Midrange. So this is like the version, we saw the Grixes version. This would traditionally be more what you'd see in the Rakdos. So you get access to Brotherhood's End. So this one's a little bit more controlling of a build. You still have your Trespassers, you still have your Blood Tithe Harvesters. Tenacious Underdog comes back from the graveyard. But you're playing Shieldred as your prominent win condition, along with Invoke Despair. And then just like Kiki's doing Kiki things. This one's probably a little bit better against the Soldiers deck that goes wide. This Grixis deck can at times struggle against heavy go wide decks. Like if Myrel gets an attack and makes 4 or 5 tokens, they're going to have a harder time dealing with 1-for-1 in comparison. Then go to Mono Blue Tempo, a deck that if you're budget conscious or starting out can be an option. I will preface this deck is fairly hard to navigate. Typically these mono blue decks, the tempo based ones, while there's some games you'll just, counter, here's my Hadijin. The sequencing, when to draw, what to counter, does take some practice, and there will be a disparity in terms of the very good mono blue players versus the ones maybe just picking up the deck. Core of the deck is just say no to your opponent in a variety of ways, bounce, counters, stuff like that, drop a Hadijin or like a 1-mana Tolarian Tear, and just kill your opponent as fast as possible when these resolve. And the last deck, this is one I've liked in Standard. It hasn't really been played much, so I went 6-1 on the ladder when I was doing some laddering. I had a lot of success with this in Alchemy as well, and then I got my 7 wins in the Decathlon event, the like treasure emblem one, with pretty much the same list. I tweaked this slightly, but it is a Portal to Phyrexia deck. So this allows you to go bigger against the like red-black mid-range decks because they usually only commit 2 to 3 creatures maybe at most. So Portal kind of forces them to sacrifice all that stuff. And then you have Brotherhood's End as a sweeper against the Soldiers decks, the more aggressive decks. Sunset Revelry gives you card draw, life gain, creatures in those matchups. Faithful Mending gives you life gain and also kind of card filtering. You have a sweeper and Elder Dragon, but ideally as early as turn 4, thanks to the Fable token. And discarding, you can throw into your graveyard a copy of Portal to Phyrexia or one with the Multiverse, and then recharge it from your graveyard into play. Also have copies of Wandering Emperor, Sanctuary Warden, and Teferi as kind of your main win conditions, but most of the time you're just reanimating your opponent's stuff. But I really like this deck. I was playing it in a couple different formats. There's not a lot of graveyard hate, and with the like if Grixis is popping up, this can't exile the actual portal. And while Invoke Despair can hit your one with the Multiverse, it cannot hit your Portal to Phyrexia. The Grixis deck does have access to a Braid, but I don't think even the Rakdos deck has a Braid. No, Rakdos deck doesn't have a Braid. No other deck has a Braid. There's the Farewell decks, so Farewell is really good against the deck, but outside of that, we don't see too much Farewell. So that's it for the week. Let me know what deck is your favorite deck currently in Standard. And I'm going to pose a question because it's been kind of going this rounds. Do you think a card needs to be banned in Standard? If so, what card? I'm curious to see what the community's thoughts are on something like this. In any case, catch you next time. Thanks as always. Stay safe out there.